Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. Good choice hitting play on this podcast, because if you're a small business owner, you need all the support and encouragement possible. What you do, what we do, it is brave as hell. We on the daily face things that scare the absolute shit out of us, and we do it anyway. That's exactly what it means to embrace being unemployed and afraid, building your own thing. And my guest today, and the story he's about to tell you, personifies this spirit. His name is Alex Marlow, and he's the director of Gym Challenge Meals, a business you'll hear more about in a second. But in this conversation, he lets us into the deeply personal, full circle journey he's taken with it and had to take across the two businesses he's developed. This episode is in two parts to ensure that you can catch the full episode within the windows of listening time that suit you, because I get you're busy, you are a small business owner after all, and you may not be able to dedicate a full hour right now. But it will be so worth it to come back and listen to part two when you're ready. It is in the show feed for you already, because what Alex has been through since we recorded this, which I will share at the end of part two, is both heartbreaking and heartwarming in the resilience it has taken. In this episode, part one, you're about to hear how one business leads to another, leads to who knows what, the power in perfecting what you have, the lingering and underreported impacts of the COVID years on small businesses, and quite simply, it is a deeply honest conversation about the life cycle of growth, change, and the challenges that can end our businesses prematurely, and personal look into the journey of one of the bravest business owners I've met. Let's get into it. I'm here with Alex Marlow, director of Gym Challenge Meals. It's meal prep for the time poor to save that precious time while still reaching your health and fitness goals. Alex has created a way for those seeking a healthier lifestyle to access locally made, delicious, healthy, and high-quality meal options for every lifestyle and goal, servicing his hometown of Mount Gambier in Australia and providing delivery across the Limestone Coast and into Western Victoria, with major franchise preparations underway. To sustain a good habit long term, you have to enjoy the process, and that's what Gym Challenge Meals, or GCM, do. They create tasty, good quality food made with love by locals for locals, with a belief that the right food can change your life and a goal to change many people's lives through making better food choices. Alex has been on one hell of a business ownership journey filled with leaps of faith, determination, challenges, exciting wins, and tough choices. I'm excited to hear your story, Alex, and explore some of those tough choices with you today. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Hello, Kim. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you, and I would love to know a little bit about you and who you are, the man behind the Gym Challenge Meals. How would your wife, Kylie, describe you?
Oh, that's a good question. I was expecting how would my friends describe me, but how would my wife, Kylie, describe me? She would describe me as somebody who is very driven, very passionate about this business, somebody that probably thinks a little bit too much and spends a little bit too much time inside my own head. A great dad, somebody that loves his kids. I think she would describe me as hardworking and, yeah, as I said, too much time inside my own head, which we can all tend to do when we're in business. We internalize things a lot. So she's put up with a lot. Bless her.
I agree. We absolutely get in our own head in business, far more than is necessary at times. And before you landed yourself in that headspace, and I mean, I know that you have been in business quite some time with this and with another, but before Gym Challenge Meals, who were you?
I was the owner operator of a hospital cafe. I was self-employed. I'd been self-employed since 2007 when I was working in Mount Gambier. If I swing back, so basically I grew up in a town called Bolton in the northwest of England. So my mum, single parent, 3 children, my brother, my older brother Richard, my sister Kendra, and myself. Mum was a single parent in England. We were struggling. Mum was a single parent doing it tough, and she was one of those parents that she went all in for the kids. So she worked hard. She was a chef. So I remember always getting dropped off at my grandma's house around the corner from school at 6 a.m. After school, getting picked up at 5, 6 o'clock at night. Mum worked hard. She knew that there was more for us out there than being struggling family in the northwest of England. So where we're from, Bolton, it was a rough part of Bolton. We were definitely on the poverty line, but I never knew we were poor. Mum gave us beautiful Christmases and birthdays, and she was a miracle worker with what she did. But she decided one day after her brother shouted her a trip to Australia, he emigrated here a few years earlier. She thought, oh, that's it, I want to move to Australia. And I think this is where I got my inbuilt nature to take big risks. Is Mum decided to sell everything we own and move with three children to the other side of the world with no support, no family. Like that's insane. I think now with three kids, my wife and I, we couldn't comprehend the size and scale of that movement to go to the other side of the world with no support and just start again. She was 40 years old when she did this. Literally just that's it, bang, pivot, change your life. So we went from growing up in urban Bolton to Nangwarry in the southeast of South Australia, which if you look it up on a map, it's 5 hours west of Melbourne and 4 hours south of Adelaide. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. How we got there is another whole story. But I went to school in Penola. I loved English. I loved writing. I loved being creative. But apparently I didn't love all the other things I had to do at school. So I didn't get into university and I was lost. So my mum said, why don't you do a TAFE course to be a chef? I'd never as much as boiled 2-minute noodles. I didn't know how to cook, but yeah, sure, that seems like a good idea. Through my TAFE course to be a chef, I did work experience, got an apprenticeship, and before I knew it, 18 years old, apprentice chef. And that was the start of my journey. I met my wife a few years later. So before Gym Challenge Meals, I was a chef. After Kylie finished uni, we traveled around Europe and then came back to Australia in 2000, at the end of 2006 with about minus $20,000 in the bank. 26 years old. What do we do? Kylie was about to start work as a teacher and I was working as a chef here in Mount Gambier. I was miserable. I had a wonderful job in Adelaide before we went overseas. And it was through being so unhappy in this head chef job I had in Mount Gambier that the opportunity to take over the lease of the hospital cafe came up. So I was 26. I knew how to cook. I knew nothing about business. I had no intention of running a business. But because I was so miserable and I was treated so poorly in the job I was in, my mum, who worked at the hospital, said, why don't you take over the hospital cafe? And I thought, what have I got to lose? We'd just signed on to build our house. So probably now is not the right time to go into a business. And the hospital cafe, it had actually failed twice. So the two previous owners had both lost money and walked away. So it wasn't probably the smartest decision, but I went into that business. And the great thing about taking over a business that had failed is that the hospital staff were gaslit into thinking that anything better than a soggy pie and cold shit and coffee that comes out of a machine that's like liquid sludge is a win. So I had a very low bar. So if I just had to step over the bar, they were happy. So luckily I could do what I could. Now the hospital cafe there wasn't much equipment there. There was a 4-burner electric stove, which was like a home, like a Harvey Norman electric stove. There was no other cooking equipment, just a few spatulas and utensils and a bain marie. But I took over and I made it work. And I was there before I started Gym Challenge Meals, I was at the hospital for 10 years and I built the business up, reinvested everything back in the business. Got to a stage where I was so proud that people would tell me it was the best hospital cafe in Australia. My customers just loved the banter and the chat and I got to know them. I felt as though I was part of the hospital team. I was working alongside the doctors and nurses and it was such a relief for them to come and they could have a 5 minute of their busy day. And the great thing about working in a hospital cafe is you get to experience what perspective is. And you're talking to customers, most of your customers, if they're not doctors or nurses or hospital staff, most of them are having pretty rough times. We do get your patients who are newborn parents, which is exciting, but you're dealing with people that are dealing with the worst shit imaginable. And your coffee that you sell them, that can be the highlight of their day. That's what I said to my staff is that you might be having a bad day, whatever's going on at home, your boyfriend might be treating you like shit, or your dog might have swallowed a tennis ball, but trust me, it's not as bad as what's going on in the ward. So it was a really humbling, grounding place to do business and to learn business and to learn about myself. And it was a raging success. It was a home run. People will tell me it was a gold mine. Looking back now in business, realizing how lucky I was to have a captive audience, low overheads, and just to have a team that knew what they were doing and to have a customer base that you didn't have to advertise on Google ads or Facebook ads. You could just serve them good coffee and they can trust their food was great. And it was a really great 10 years of my life.
So deeply interesting and so true about the benefits of a captive audience, like how rare that is today in particular, where you have that ability to provide an experience to a captive audience. But being able to have that implicit value that you must have been able to achieve through that role as well, being able to brighten up somebody's day. I mean, it's just makes, I guess, the experience of being in hospitality, which I understand could be very challenging, so
Mm.
much nicer because you're able to, really see that value in someone's day. It makes a lot of sense what you shared. How then did you move from that space of providing beautiful service and beautiful value to those people to your current business and Gym Challenge Meals? What sparked it? What brought your energy into that space?
So it happened by accident. If you'd have told me 7 years ago that I would no longer be working at the hospital cafe, that I'd sell that business and I'd be doing something else, I would have thought, what? Like, you crazy. Why would I do that? But it happened by accident. So when F45 came to Mount Gambier in 2017, I think it was, it might have been late to that. Anyway, 2017, F45 came to town. And I was, as most people in business are, I didn't put a lot of time into my health and my fitness. I was working, our kids were very, very young. We only had 1 or 2 children. For the first 6 or 7 years at the hospital cafe, we had no children. So I could just 6, 7 days a week building it up. But then when we had kids, my health and fitness suffered, as most people does when you're working such long hours. F45 came to town. I went to the open free trial day and I fell in love and I'd get in early, train, and I became one of those people, one of those obnoxious people that would train every day and then post about it on my socials. And I became very much a walking advert for the benefits of that business. And I became really good friends with the owner of F45 down here. And it just became this really beautiful community. And then F45 have like an 8-week challenge where if you eat the food that you get on an app, you cook these recipes, and if you do the exercise, you lose a lot of weight. Now, that was true. And the only difference is that down here in Mount Gambier, there was no opportunity to order these meals. You had to make them yourself. So I thought, look, I'm going to be making these meals myself from the hospital cafe. Maybe if I do a few extra, I asked Lisa, the owner, maybe I could, on the group chat, their 45 group chat in Mount Gambier, just sell a few extra meals. So I would start advertising the meals from the app. And then I sold, I think, 10 meals on the first day. And I thought that was amazing because that's 10 customers that wouldn't have come all the way out to the hospital to buy food. So I'm thinking, cool, this is a nice little way to get extra people in. And then word quickly spread that these meals were getting done. Straight away, it was like, oh, this is a great idea. And then before I knew it, it wasn't just F45 people buying the meals. It was the doctors and the nurses, the shift workers who thinking, oh, I want to eat something healthy and not just casseroles, lasagnas, wedges, focaccias that I was making at the hospital. So suddenly this whole little second revenue stream opened up. And when we got 2 or 3 challenges into it, 12 months down the line, we were suddenly making sometimes 200 meals a day on top of trying to run the cafe. And just through word of mouth and the quality of the meals and some of the meals, let's be honest, some of them were shit. I was following along the recipes and some of the recipes I was following to a T. There was balsamic roasted Brussels sprouts one day and I thought it was no good. So I thought I had to pivot. I couldn't just exclusively do the app meal. So I had to then put my own take on it and then quickly learn how to, get quality food under 450 calories, decent amount of protein. So then I could put my own twist on it, switch the menu up. And then before I knew it, it was just a bit of a monster and it kind of took over the hospital. So I had this busy little cafe that was in itself a beast to run. And then I suddenly had this whole other little enterprise that had grown as well. So that was the sweet spot where we were just making stupid amounts of money. And I thought to myself, if ever there's a time to take a risk, if ever there's a time to kind of put your cards in the middle of the table or put your chips in the middle of the table, this was it. We had the opportunity to kind of either scale up and do something exciting and new, or I could scale back because it was overtaking the business. So I chose to scale up. And that was a real big learning curve, considering that most of my business experience up until that point had been a home run. Nothing I'd done had failed. Everything I did turned to gold. I hadn't experienced suffering or failure in business, which 10 years in kind of gives you a false sense of security, gives you you're wearing a armor that you probably don't realize. It's a tough world in business, and my introduction into business probably a false sense of security. So I decided to just go all in, and I put a manager in at the hospital cafe, put a chef in at the hospital cafe, and I walked away. I said, right, you do this, and I'm going to come over here and do this, and that's where Gym Challenge Meals in 2019. I walked away from the cafe. I still owned it, but it was under management, and I just went all in on this little concept, and that's when things got pretty hairy, to be honest.
I think blind faith is sometimes all we have in this
Yes.
gig, and a healthy dose of it is necessarily a bad thing. We have to have a little bit of that faith in there. But yeah, sometimes then it makes the struggles feel a little bit harder. What were some of the struggles that you faced then in terms of building Gym Challenge meals separately?
So some of the struggles for me were just basically naivety and just one of Lisa who ran F45 here in Mount Gambier. I listened to her on a podcast once, and she was very similar to me, very much just say yes and figure it out later. And it was very much a case for me, right? Say yes, right? I'm going to rent this space. I did no planning, I did no budgeting. I just thought this is going to work. These meals are going gangbusters. The hospital cafe revenue is great. That's going to underpin 6-8 months. But I underestimated putting, the cost of a replacement chef and a manager at the hospital cafe, 2 people for my one wage. Then you factor in that the exponential growth isn't going to continue. There's going to be a plateauing of meals. I'm not just going to, just because I've got a new premises, double the revenue if I don't have a marketing plan, a strategy. It was just very much all through Facebook, just winging it. And I think back now and I just think that it's crazy. And then also you've got the extra doubling your overhead. Suddenly you've got a rental space. I probably agreed a pretty silly rental tenancy agreement. I probably paid too much, but it was all I agreed to. I said, yep, brilliant, perfect. There's an old jail kitchen just sitting there. So just to give context, where I moved to there's a beautiful accommodation in Mount Gambier called the Old Mount Gambier Jail. And Jamie, the owner, and his wife Mel, they've renovated this old disused jail. It was the Mount Gambier Jail that was used up until 1990. So it was 100-year-old brick walls. It's incredible. And the kitchen was just sitting there unused. So it had everything I needed. It had a cool room, plenty of bench space, plenty of storage space, just what I needed to prep heaps of meals. So I moved out there and I underestimated, obviously, the cost of the overheads, electricity, the rent, but I also underestimated the fact that it was such a cold place, that it wasn't a beautiful kitchen to work. It was a beautiful premises to stay. It was lovingly curated, but the kitchen was dark, it was cold, and Mount Gambier in winter can be a pretty hectic, pretty cold place. So I was working 5 a.m. in a cold kitchen till 5, 6 at night, cooking a lot of meals, mind you. So I was making all these meals. So we were selling shitloads of meals, but my margin disappeared. I was, for the first 3 months, lost money over both businesses because I just didn't quite get it right. I didn't quite have the revenue base enough to cover both. So the challenges were just doing too much and underestimating the sheer scale and cost and what that would do to me physically. So I went from a person that had quite a good balance, work-life balance, someone that was training, someone that was fit, someone was healthy, to suddenly doing 70 hours a week for the first time in my life, losing money, for the first time in my life, questioning my sanity, for the first time in my life thinking, oh, I think I've bitten off too much more than I can chew here. But at the same time, pushing through, then starting to see those losses suddenly turn into break even, suddenly turn into a bit of growth. And it was about 8-month journey though, and it was pretty humbling, pretty sobering, and it was really tough.
Business admin can feel brutal some weeks, and especially at this time of the year, but there's something we shouldn't forget to add to the list. That something is celebrating the people who help make our business dreams possible with a special gift that aligns with your needs and theirs. I want to introduce you to Card.Gift, a brilliant company and friend of the show based out of Melbourne, Australia. They know how crucial it is to acknowledge the contributions of team members who help us achieve our goals. Whether they're meeting targets, providing exceptional service or innovating solutions, their dedication to our small business dreams deserves recognition. Through Card.Gift, you can create a custom FPOS card they can use anywhere that accepts FPOS, or you can choose a card that allows the recipient to come back to the site and choose exactly where they want to spend. It makes gifting super easy and personal. So personal, in fact, you can create them with photos of you and your team, your brand's logo, or a custom written or video message that appears as part of the unboxing, which is a beautiful way to deepen the connection with those you're sending to. Card.Gift are all about reviving that personal touch so that every gift feels like a heartfelt gesture and not just a transaction. It's the perfect solution because you're giving a personal gift experience that's also super helpful right now because #CozyLives. Order soon to receive your beautifully personalised physical card or schedule a delivery of your digital gift card to land in their inbox on June 30. We love a schedule and forget. So maybe it's your team you want to show gratitude to, your clients that you want to thank, or even just something fun for you. Pop Card.Gift into Google and enjoy a little unemployed and afraid discount by adding unemployed 10 at checkout for 10% off selected Visa, MasterCard, FPOS, and the Card.Gift swap card products. Big snaps to Card.Gift for making our end of financial year gifting easier and for supporting the show. some of the steps that you took to be able to get a bit of a handle on how you can increase your margin, what cost neutral is going to look like, where you can find your scale and where you can find your savings? Where did you go to what was helpful for you through that period?
It was just trying to create systems, trying to work out a way to do things more efficiently. It was just making sure the hospital cafe was, which was still the main breadwinner, it was making sure that wasn't a bloated mess. Because all of a sudden, when I step away from that business, you might have a manager and a chef in there, but they don't understand the business like you. So it was really watching the margins over there. So really holding them to account to the wage bill, holding them to account to the cost of goods. And that helped me stabilize what was going on over there so that can underpin what was going on here. And just for me, it was just working out better deals with my suppliers and just being more efficient, working out better ways to make a lot of food quickly. And that was then me seeing that, right, I'm going to need better equipment. Instead of, one underbench oven that can only do 2 trays of food at a time, I'm probably going to need to get a combi. So I started planning in my head what a Gym Challenge Meals commercial kitchen premises would look like. And I was also became a lot more tuned to just how I would market my food to my customers. It was a very archaic system, very time consuming, but I would message all of my customers through Messenger reminders. So it was ridiculously labor intensive. It was stupid. There was no automation. It was just basically Facebook orders, sending out reminder messages to all my customers, reminding them to order, and then putting it all into a spreadsheet. I look back now and I think, how on earth did I do it? How on earth? I'm getting anxiety thinking about it, to be honest, but I just saw the ways to make margin, just increasing the orders, getting the customer base, just building that customer base. And at the end of the day, the food was good. It was great, and it was solving a problem for people. And that word of mouth in a small town like Mount Gambier was priceless. And then we got to a stage where there was enough meals getting ordered that I knew what the revenue would be for the week. And then from that, I could work out what I need to spend and what I need to budget. And that would have been the time come July, August, when we got it to a point between both businesses were profitable or at least breaking even. That would have been the perfect time to say to myself, right, we've got it to a point now. We need to consolidate. We need to consolidate for 6 months, 12 months, build a bit of cash behind us, and then see what the future looks like. But my wife was about to have our daughter, Audrey, our baby. This is come October. And I was burnt out. I was doing 70, 80 hours a week. And that was when I went to the bank, got some money to build the premises. So the GCM that we have here, the shop fit out, I got a really great lease on a premises. And in October / November was when I shut Gym Challenge Meals down completely, signed the lease to the premises, and I took 3 months off. So I had that time at home with Kylie and with Audrey, and we could oversee the build, have the break that I needed. This is October 2019. So just before 2020, the cafe was ticking along nicely. So I took the time off so I could take the deep breath, be at home with Audrey. Because I was thinking, how am I meant to stop and give Kylie some support when Audrey was born if I'm working these 70, 80 hours a week? So that was the right time to press pause, reflect, and then give myself the time to plan what the business would look like, what the menus can look like, how's running a shop front going to work, kind of recruit the team that I need and build out a cafe team. So it was an important pause. If I hadn't taken that pause, Gym Challenge Meals wouldn't have lasted 6 months. I wouldn't have lasted 6 months. It would have been complete retreat and just go back to the kiosk with my tail between my legs, burnt out, I think.
I really like the point that you just made there around improving your baseline. I think often in this sort of fast moving, constant pivot, small business world at any level, revenue takes a hit or something becomes really challenging and we look to new products or new things to create in order to increase revenue. And the fact that you went back to systems and processes, I think there's a real lesson in there. It's, we don't always need to reinvent or invent something new. Perhaps there is an uplift that can be found in some of the less sexy stuff. I think for a service-based industry in particular, this is something that's really relative because, you've got your service offering, you've got this business starts to slow. Let me go to market with a new product. Let me go to market with a new service offering. And just the build up phase of that is so time and energy consuming that, I think it's a really valuable insight that just through the focus on your baseline, through going back to basics and going, hang on, how do we set ourselves up here with the cafe to be refining our systems and processes and our cost modeling to make sure that that's sorted. So then we can refocus again on other things is a really valuable lesson.
Thank you. It was a chaotic time. And let's be honest, there wasn't a heap of systems in place at the time because it was still relatively small. But the systems that I'd put in place at the hospital meant that for the first time ever could look after itself. So yeah, it is you are only one person. And then one person cannot physically oversee two sites without some sort of handing over, some kind of passing responsibility to other people. And a lot of people, a lot of small business owners, and I'm still guilty of this, try to do too much. And you can, when things get tough, you do become a little insular and you just try to do it all yourself. And that just creates more perpetual suffering and a downward spiral. So letting go and getting people to support you and help you is the key lesson. And I had people that wanted to help me at the hospital. I had the most incredible leadership team of a manager and a chef that wanted to help. And then the rest of the team had been with me there for 10 years. They loved that business like it was their own. So I was really lucky. So I was in Gym Challenge Meals probably without the systems. I was kind of making it up as I go along, but at least I knew one part of my business was kind of humming along nicely.
And, taking breaks to grow and reflecting in order to move forward is just such an important part of the process. Again, that I think the natural state of a business builder is go, 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 go all the time. But sometimes a brief respite away can give the perspective that you need. So what changed for you when you came back into Gym Challenge Meals after your break?
After the break, it was all in. We had a new, so in January 2020, we opened. So it was, even though I was off having a break, I was still stopping into the kiosk, helping from time to time, but I had time to plan what the shop was going to look like, what the menu was going to be, what the team was going to be like, what's the roster going to look like. I had a real chance to build out what the shop would look like. And that was really important to put that time in. And I was refreshed. I had a chance to get back exercising again, and I was ready to go kind of full steam ahead to this new concept. And the thing about Gym Challenge Meals was Mount Gambier was proud. They were just so excited to see how this little tiny concept had grown into, suddenly it was going to be a shop front. And I remember there was just a real excitement around it. People were excited to see that, wow, shit, it's a store now. It was before we did home delivery, before we had a long shelf life packaging, but people were excited to come in and see this food come to life, and they come and get smoothies and coffee. So that time off allowed me to fine tune the menu and just work out what my team would look like. So without that break, and I also got to spend time for the first time at home with my daughter and with Kylie. For the first time, with my other two children, with Henry and Archie, I was back working within 2 or 3 days of them being born, working hard. Whereas this time I actually got to stop and take a break. So as I said, without that break, we wouldn't have been able to get through the next 6 months. And then 2020, as we all know, that year threw up a hell of a lot of challenges. And that was, if I'd known what was coming, I think I would have held off building a stock, because how could we have, in all of my wildest projections and all of my worst case financial scenarios, how could I have thought, silly me, that a worldwide pandemic was going to be on the horizon, especially one that would impact a hospital so much? So probably segue to biggest challenges was January 2020, 6 weeks after opening, we were shut because of COVID. How on earth do you process that? How on earth do you think you've taken this massive risk? You've put everything up for risk. You've put your life on the line to build this new business, and then we're shutting the doors. And because it was a new business, we didn't qualify for the JobKeeper support that was there. So the JobKeeper support my hospital business got, I had to kind of use to prop up both businesses. And that was it. That was devastating. So 6 weeks after we opened the doors, we shut the doors without any indication when we'll be reopened. And I went back to the cafe, laid off a lot of staff, and just me and one other staff member kind of got through at the hospital for 6 weeks. But it was just shit. And I'm sure there's people who are listening to this podcast who got through COVID and have probably still got PTSD from that time, probably still paying off tax debt from the ATO being, oh, that's nice, you can put your tax debt on hold, but you've got to push all that tax down the hill and it's got to get paid back eventually. With what and how? And that was all questions that in March, June, July, August 2020, thinking, how am I going to do this? It was horrible. It was a shit time.
I think that's a really interesting insight, actually, in terms of the tax debt deferral. It's a really great point. I think that we probably haven't touched on much with recent episodes of this podcast, that, those decisions that were made at the height of that crazy time for everybody, what that's doing now. Now we're here, we're chatting in 2024. World is relatively back to normal. Has this kind of like normal to now period been like for you?
For us, the hospital was decimated. The hospital cafe business was decimated for the whole entire 18 months, especially the last 6 months when the rest of Australia was coming out of COVID. South Australian Health Service just went full DEFCON, shut everything down. So the last 6 months when JobKeeper had ended was actually the worst time of business. There was no visitors allowed into the hospital in Mount Gambier from November 21 till May 2022. And then so tax deferrals. So you don't realize you accumulate BAS off of trading at full steam. And then all of a sudden you just literally, your revenue stream, you drop 90% revenue. So all of a sudden you've got a $40,000 BAS due with no revenue to pay it off. And then this is over multiple BASs. So you've got all of a sudden $100,000 tax debt that the ATO have kindly let you defer. But eventually COVID's over now. We want our money. Okay, but it's not over for me. I've got no visitors. And where you had this overreaction and just of too much support in the early days to just nothing, it was awful. And then so from a personal point of view, it was tricky trying to navigate both. So thankfully, I made the decision in 2022. I put the hospital cafe up for sale. It was one or the other, and I thought, I've done my time there. This business, I think, I genuinely believe this is future for me, multi-franchise opportunity. We had good momentum. I had investors that believed in what I was doing here. So I sold the cafe, and it's heartbreaking because I think under normal circumstances, I would have sold the cafe and it would have been our nest egg. We would have made squillions. It was great. But we used a lot of the proceeds from that to just, the ATO said, thank you very much. And that just is what it is. It was either pay back an impossible debt or at least sell the hospital cafe, get back to neutral, have some money that we invested back into GCM and a few personal things. And that was that. You can either spend your time being devastated about the fact that you've spent 14 years building an asset that was basically had to not give it away. The owner paid good money for the business because in normal terms, it was a great business, but we possibly didn't benefit from it as much as we could have because of tax deferrals. But that's just life. I'm not the first person in business who's fallen afoul to, especially in COVID, through things completely out of the control. And I managed to compartmentalize that, right, done, move on, and then we can focus all our energy on GCM. But the toll that takes on you personally is you can't explain unless you're in business, unless you're dealing with the numbers associated with what large revenue businesses can generate, then realizing that you're responsible for that. It can be a lonely place, and people see your cafes are flat out. You must be making millions. It's not. It can be the opposite, and you've still got to keep a brave face. You've got to turn up every day. I've still got to focus on Gym Challenge Meals, growing that, knowing that there was all this personal turmoil going on through no fault of my own. It is what it is, and we made a decision, and we moved on. So thankfully, we could move on. A lot of people didn't have the luxury of being able to move on. A lot of people had to wear that tax debt, go bankrupt and sell their businesses with nothing to show for it. So I'm really fortunate that we are where we are, but it does chip away at you a little bit, and it takes its toll.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, because it's just such a valuable learning for so many people to feel seen if it's something that you can resonate with, or just feel like this is the reality sometimes, and this is the stuff we have to deal with. As much as there's benefits, there's this, and I think that's a really important message for people. Listener, in part 2 of this chat, which is already on the feed for you, you will hear what happened when Alex was able to focus all of his energy onto the one business and the journey it took him on. He shares more impactful learnings that could directly apply to your own business or just be hugely relatable to the journey of business ownership in general, but I'm going to guess you're going to get both. You'll hear all about the surprising turn of events he's now working through also. So head over to part 2 and I'll see you there.